What I'd like to do in the demonstration now is examine DNS with nslookup. Let's go do some forward lookups and some reverse lookups using that nslookup utility. The way I use that utility is I open up a command prompt, and I can use it in several ways. First, let's verify that I have a DNS server configured on my workstation. To do that, I'm going to issue the IP config/all command. And that will tell me a bunch of information. If I scroll up and look at my Ethernet adapter, I'll see that I have an IP address of 10.0.0.10. My default gateway is 10.0.0.1. And my DNS server is currently configured to use 8.8.8.8, which is Google's public DNS server. I can use nslookup in a few ways. If I want to just find out what the IP address of a server is, I say nslookup and then put in the website. So we'll say pluralsight.com. And here we do that lookup and we see that the IP address for pluralsight.com is 52.39.231.183 or 52.88.79.159. Well, which one does our workstation use? It uses the first one in the list. Why are there two? Well, there are two because what Pluralsight is doing here is they are doing something called round robin. And round robin simply means that when my workstation asks DNS for the IP address of pluralsight.com, it'll return this first value. If I ask again, it will sometimes flip those values. There we go. If I ask it more than once here, it flips the values. So now we see that 52.88.79.159 is now the first address in the list, and the .183 address is the second one in the list. So what we're doing here is we're distributing the load of users connecting to pluralsight.com between two different IP addresses. Now, I wish I could say it was that simple, that pluralsight.com is at either this address or that address. It's a lot more complicated than that behind the scenes, but fundamentally, this is exactly what's going on. When we go to pluralsight.com, we resolve that host name into one of these two addresses and then use those addresses to build the TCP session to go get Pluralsight's website as well as the video that you're watching right now. The other way we can use nslookup is we can just type the command nslookup. You have to spell it correctly. And what it'll do is it'll tell us now what the server we're using. And right now the default server has a name of Google public DNSA.google.com, and its IP address is 8888. So right now we are using server 8888 to do our resolution. We can do the same exercise here, www.pluralsight.com, and that will return, again, the values of pluralsight.com. What I can do now is I can actually do a reverse lookup. What I've been doing so far are forward lookups, meaning that I tell nslookup what URL to resolve, and then it goes to the DNS server and attempts to resolve that address. I can also do a reverse lookup. The reverse lookup means that I'm putting in an IP address, 52.88.79.159. And what that does is it looks that address up and finds out what URL is associated with it. But if you notice when I do that, this URL that's affiliated with that IP address is not www.pluralsight.com. The reason for that is that in DNS, there are actually two different databases that are not connected. You have a forward lookup zone, which has a URL to IP address, and then you have a second database in DNS that has the IP address and its URL that's affiliated with it. And those two tables are maintained separately. So what's happening here, if we examine this URL, we can glean some information about how Pluralsight delivers its website to you, the users who are currently watching this video. So first of all, if we look at that URL, we have the top level domain name of .com. We have a second level domain name of Amazon AWS. Now, what the heck is that? Amazon AWS, that is Amazon Web Services. That is Amazon's cloud business. And their cloud business provides a very reliable platform for delivering web content. So it appears that Pluralsight is contracting with Amazon to deliver this website. If we go to the next one, we have our third level domain name here of compute, then US West 2, then our IP address with EC2 in front of it. So that's our host name. So why are these two different? They're different because Amazon AWS owns this IP address. We don't have pluralsight.com set up as the reverse lookup for this. But when we do that reverse lookup, we get some information about who Pluralsight is using to host its website. If I do the same thing with www.begurtis.com, we'll see that it has an IP address there of 71.86.216.12. If I do the reverse lookup on that, let's do the short method and just copy and paste. Here we'll see that it looks like I have contracted with the Wisconsin location of charter.com to host my website. The reality is I didn't do that. What I do is I use a website called iPage to host begurtis.com, and apparently iPage must contract with charter.com to provide some kind of service. This is actually the first time I realized that my website has some affiliation with the local internet service provider of charter.com. If we do one where the reverse lookup works correctly, I can use the university that's right in my backyard. I live in Madison, Wisconsin here, so if I do a wisc.edu, what will come back is the IP address for University of Wisconsin of 144.92.9.70. If I do the reverse lookup on that, University of Wisconsin actually has that set up properly to do the reverse lookup so that when I type in the IP address, I'm actually getting wisc.edu is the same name that I get both forward and reverse. We don't always have to use the server that's configured in our IP configuration to use nslookup. We can change that server to any DNS server that we wish. The way we do that is we issue the command server, and then we tell it the IP address of the DNS server that we wish to use to do the lookups within nslookup. 8.8.4.4 is another public DNS server from Google. It's their secondary DNS server. So if I type the command server space 8.8.4.4, within nslookup now I'm going to be using this other server to do my lookups. So if I do www.google.com, it'll tell me the IP address that it wants me to go to for Google. Same thing for Pluralsight. It's going to give me effectively the same answers. What I've done though is I've just changed the DNS server that I'm using to resolve that address. This becomes very useful when I'm troubleshooting issues on a workstation and I want to find out if my DNS server is broken, my network is broken, or something else isn't working correctly. DNS not working on your network can become extremely problematic. The reason it can become extremely problematic is DNS is probably the most valuable and important application that runs on your network, because without it, we can't do that URL or host name to IP address lookup, which means that us as users have to have that database in our head, and that never works out right. Applications are not designed to use IP addresses directly typically. So DNS becomes a critical component of our network. Being able to use nslookup and test different servers is a very valuable skill. In the very last module of this course, we're going to do some troubleshooting where we're going to have problems with DHCP and DNS that lend to what appears to be a network down situation, when in reality, the network might be up. It may just be some services on our network that are down.